Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. Kendra, can you do a roll call?
Sure.
Thanks.
We'll start with Mr. Trey Ferguson. Here. Mr. Eric Thompson. All right. Board Member Kathleen Marty.
Here.
Board Member Barbara Sampson.
Present.
Mr. Tim Tabek.
Here?
All right. And Mr. Mike Duffy. Here. Mr. Eric Jones. Mr. Brendan Lofton. And Ms. Sandra Gray. All right. That concludes the roll call, Chairman.
Okay, so we do have a quorum, and we can get started. I'd like to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we have a few people here this evening, and I'm sure we'll have some comments, both positive and negative, about the permit application. So I would like to start off by asking everybody to turn their cell phones off, make sure so we don't get any disturbances, and we can try to make it through the process of asking folks to come forward. And also I'd like to make sure that everybody is on the sign-up sheet. And so we have names and addresses, because when people come up, we'll try just to get them to speak and not ask to repeat for spelling, and then we can have it all in the comments there. Is there anybody that needs to sign in before we get started so we good? Okay, we'll hang on just a second to let you get signed in. Thanks. So I guess as they're signing in, I can take a minute to, I guess, discuss the process a little bit. We'd really like everybody to have an opportunity to speak. If folks are going to be, I guess, in a way redundant to somebody who's spoken previously, and it's a comment that might be, judged as an opinion as opposed to a document that has a proof from a professional, please kind of come up to the front and state your name, address, where you live, and if it's nothing new, we maybe prefer to say, okay, please add my name to the record, what was previously stated, and you also feel free to state that individual's name, but that's up to y'all. If to try to speed things along, that option is available to you all. If you choose not to do it, we are glad to hear what it has to say if it takes everybody saying the same thing. So that's not a problem, but please help us along so we can, leave before too late in the evening. Okay, so everybody is signed in. So what I'd like to do is the folks that are signed in that are going to speak, please stand up, raise your hand, and we'll get sworn in. Okay, try to read this off here. Do you all solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. Okay, Kendrick, do you have everything together to where you can discuss the application?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully everybody can hear me all right, but thank you for attending tonight's Board of Adjustment meeting. Before I begin with the introduction to our agenda item for tonight, I just wanted to go ahead and address the special use process a little bit for you. So this is a quasi-judicial hearing, and while most uses are permitted by right, there are some uses that require a special use. And the board's responsibility is essentially to look at each criteria that you see here on both of these screens, and essentially decide to make an approval or disapproval of each criteria. Each criteria, again, must actually receive an approval for the board prior to the issuance of a special use permit. The board also reserves the right to impose additional conditions beyond zoning requirements. So, thank you. I'm going to begin by introducing our first item. All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and good evening to the board. This is Thrivemore Community, Carolina Colors. This is special use permit 002-777-2023. The location, in accordance to the tax record, is 5025 Old Airport Road, and the proposed use is a multifamily residence or multifamily residences. The request summary, the applicant here is Vandersilk. He is the president and CEO of Thrivemore, Inc. The owner is Overlook Holdings, LLC, and the zoning district for the property is residential residential 8, or R-8. Here is a vicinity map for the parcel, and it's highlighted in blue coloring there. And here is a zoning map to reflect the R-8 color, and again, the parcel's highlighted. And that is followed by the site plan and essentially the items, site plan for the actual review of that site and with what they're proposing. And if the board has any questions, I'll take those at this time.
Does anybody have any questions, any board members?
And additional information for the board, I do have an expert that has actually came to essentially answer any questions traffic related. Her name is Deanna Treble. She works among us as well. She's with, I believe it's the Metropolitan Planner Organization, and any traffic questions that come from the board, she is going to be able to stand in and answer them as an expert.
Okay, thank you.
Is the applicant here at this time?
Yes, we're good, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Tabak and members of the Board of Adjustments. My name is Eric Remington. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Ward & Smith here in town. Work out at the community college. And I'm going to be representing the applicant tonight, and I have several people who are here with me to present the information on behalf of the applicant to the board. I do have some materials that I'd like to hand out to the board. Someone asked Pam to help me with that, if that's all.
Okay, thank you.
As you all are aware, this is a special use permit application on behalf of Thrivemore Community at Carolina Colors, which is really Thrivemore Incorporated. And what I'd like to do is just go through the materials real quickly with you. The booklet that I've handed out has certain items in it. Under tab number 1 is a copy of the application that was submitted, which includes the traffic impact analysis study. It's not the complete traffic analysis impact study because that was 100 and something pages, but that has been submitted to the planning staff and is part of their record. And then it's got the proposed site plan, which Kendrick just showed up on the monitor there. In tab number 2 is a valuation opinion, and you will hear from our an appraiser that is going to speak on behalf of us about valuation and impact on properties. And then the third tab is a PowerPoint presentation. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to get that to Kendrick, so we've just provided it in paper format, but you can follow along. And we're going to go in order with the witnesses that are going to testify through that. And then the last tab is professional resumes of the individuals who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant. So I'm joined this evening by Reed Vandersilk, who is here. He's the CEO and president of Thrivemore Incorporated. Lucas Shaw is here. He's the project manager and works with LCS Development. And each of these individuals will come up and introduce themselves again and tell you their background and things like that before they testify. Christy Mack, who is with SFCS, which is a design company. She's a project manager. Kimberly Barr, who is a architecture and design professional with Stimmel engineering firm. Chase Smith, who is with Raymond County and Associates. Cal Morgan, who is with J.C. Morgan Appraisals. And then I'll come up and speak at the end to some of the land use applications. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Vandersilk to introduce you to Thrivemore and what they're about.
Yeah, thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your time this evening. A little bit about our organization. We are a faith-based nonprofit organization that does retirement communities. We have 4 in North Carolina. We've been serving seniors since 1951. And our model, our preferred model, and what we're proposing here is a full continuum of care. The industry calls it a continuing care retirement community. And the reason we believe in that model is that couples do not age at the same rate. One gets health issues before the other one. By having everything on the same campus, they have the ability to keep couples together on the same campus. So we think it's a very important part of couples living out their best life. So we do have, like I said, a 70-year legacy of excellence in senior living experiences, and it really is an experience. Independent living that people come in, they're very active and engaged in the community, but as health conditions change, we're there for them. We're rooted in core values: honesty, fairness, compassion, cooperation, dependability, humor, kindness, loyalty, patience, and conscientiousness. Quality care and meaningful living is an important element of what we do. And because we are faith-based and nonprofit, we do provide benevolent care, or sometimes in the healthcare industry it's called charity care. But that's for people that have run out of money or cannot afford to pay a full private pay rate on their own. We will do a sliding scale. So we're able to really provide a wonderful environment to all economic levels. And that, again, an important element of who we are as a faith-based organization. So thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Lucas Shaw.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Can residents enter at different stages of their life, or must they come in at a certain level?
So typically they come in independent living. They are able to come in assisted living, memory care, or skilled nursing, but there has to be available rooms. And we typically reserve those rooms for people that start with us in independent living. So it's possible, but I also don't want to create false expectations.
Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Lucas Shaw with LCS Development out of Des Moines, Iowa. I've been doing development for nearly 20 years. Started in the grocery store industry and have been doing solely senior living development now for the past almost 10 years. LCS Development in particular out of Des Moines has been developing for over 50 years, specifically in the senior living industry. That's all we develop all across the country. Just wanted to hit real quick on the next couple of slides that you were presented related to the overall master plan and the phase 1 just so everybody kind of understands the scope. So the phase one, as you can see on page 6 and is listed on the right-hand side, is proposing to have 158 independent living apartments, 52 single-story cottages, 18 assisted living with 12 memory care and 12 skilled nursing, as well as the commons and amenities that would come along with that. Multiple restaurants for multiple dining options. There will be lots of outdoor amenities and activities, as you can see from the site plan, walking paths all around. I do want to also note, as you can see on page 6, on the left-hand side of the page, there is a riparian buffer along that property line where those lots, those single-family lots abut to the property. That's a 100-foot wide riparian buffer that is required and will be maintained. That's 50 foot on both sides. So I just want to make sure that it's well known that that is there and to be maintained. As we look into phase 2, we're proposing another potential 59 independent living apartments, 12 cottages, 18 assisted living, and 12 skilled nursing. And then a potential phase 3 with 59 additional independent living apartments, 24 cottages, and 12 memory care. And then a potential phase 4 would add in 24 hybrid apartments, which is just smaller scale apartment building. And if you go to page 7, I don't need to go through these numbers again, but this just simply highlights the actual structures that at this point in the conceptual design are intended to be constructed in phase 1 to get to those numbers that we've outlined. The larger portion in the center that's highlighted in yellow where it's all connected, that would obviously be the multi-story apartment building, with everything else in this phase being all single-story buildings. Any questions related to the scope of the project that we're looking at?
So I just had one question on the riparian buffer.
Yeah.
So that's the creek, I guess, that separates the property, so it has to be buffered with vegetation permanently?
The creek is actually on the bottom side. I don't believe there's a creek along that property line. There's one on that side too. Yeah, so it is along that creek, and
Okay.
again, it's 50 foot on either side.
Okay, yeah, good deal, thank you.
Yeah.
The multi-story, is that the 59 independent living apartments?
It would be, in phase 1 would be the 158 independent
see.
living
Okay,
apartments. And then the future phases add on to that same building, so then you would be correct. Phase 2
Oh,
would
okay.
add on 59 more, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned restaurant options. Where, is that within the common dining facility within the independent living apartments?
Yeah, so that would be within the Commons building. It's basically this central hub. So if you go back to the master plan where you can see where it's kind of got kind of the curved shapes on both sides, those are all intended to be apartments. And this whole middle section would be where it would be all of your common spaces, your fitness center, potential for multiple restaurants, obviously, lounge, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Are there any plans, I don't see it in this phasing, but are there any plans for out parcels 1 and 2 to have any structures there?
There are not currently, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, so from a housekeeping issue before we continue on, I did see a couple hands go up, and everybody will have an opportunity to speak. What we're going to try to do is go through all the witnesses that are with the development group to speak. Then we'll ask for folks that oppose the project to speak after that's completed, and the group will then have a chance for rebuttal also after the case. And we're going to do it that way, and we'll get folks to come up positive also, so everybody has an opportunity, space it out a little bit to where they can think a little bit and be able to continue the conversation. So just a little housekeeping bit there. But yeah, continue on there. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Taylor. The next person that we're going to have come up is Christy Mack. She's going to speak to you about design elements.
Hi, good evening. My name is Christy Mack. I'm a senior project manager and architect with SFCS Architects. We are a national architecture firm. We have 4 offices in the country, and we do projects, I would say, in 48 out of the 50 states in the country. I am a senior project manager. I have been managing projects for over 10 years, like I said, across the country. I'm a member of the American Institute of Architects, and I'm NCARD certified, which is the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, and I'm licensed in both New York and North Carolina. If you go to slide 9, that is showing some precedent examples of the Carolina Colors existing community. So we're showing a variety of architecture that exists in the community currently. So there are duplexes, there are townhomes, single-family homes, in a variety of architectural, what they call coastal styles. There is also the Viridian, which is a senior living facility. They have independent living, which is in a 3-story attached apartment building, as well as they have assisted living, which is in a 1-story building and has within that building they have a 1-story common space. Also showing on that slide is the entry boulevard into each individual neighborhood for Carolina Colors, which really shows signage that each neighborhood has, as well as the tree-lined entry and boulevard, kind of a divided boulevard into each one of those spaces. Slide 10 shows.
Unfortunately, sir, I didn't receive the PowerPoint to be able to put it up on the screens. I apologize.
Slide 10 shows a rendering of a possible proposed entry into the Thrivemore community, which shows architecture and similar entry as to other neighborhoods. So there would be a tree-lined boulevard. There would be signage, sidewalks to make it a very walkable community. And then slide 11 shows some initial renderings of what we envision the neighborhood to look like. So we're envisioning on the outer peninsula of the proposed development to be single-family 1-story homes and possible duplex homes. The architecture would match the existing Carolina Colors community, meaning there would be fiber cement siding, asphalt shingles, possible areas of metal roofing as accents. Each one of the cottage single-family homes would have a selection of varying exterior materials of stone and siding so that there's a variety of colors. So each home is not the same going on that waterfront and throughout the neighborhood. And then the proposed 3-story apartment building, which is independent living, would be set back. So that is on the back of the peninsula. It's about a 1/4 mile from the nearest existing home within the Carolina Colors community. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I know you said you're gonna have senior living homes and stuff. Are they gonna be income based?
They are, Thrivemore can speak more specifically to this, but this is an entrance fee-based community. So residents would pay an entry fee to enter the community.
Oh, so they're not gonna be income based, it's just gonna be one set price for all of them?
So the independent living will be, it will be entrance fee based, and it will be based on the size of the unit. As we get into need-based care, where people don't have options, we do admit into need-based care, and we do a sliding scale for that. But independent living is a choice. People can stay in their home, they can go to a condo, they can choose a retirement community. So that is a market rate for those.
If we have another question.
Mr. Chairman, the photographs on page 9, those are the existing homes in Carolina Colors. So are the new ones going to resemble what is pictured there?
They are going to be similar. So we are proposing each individual family cottage would have like a large front porch, a large covered front porch. There would be landscaping as part of their package, which is similar to the Carolina Colors development. So yes, the architecture would be very similar. It would, there wouldn't be really differentiating details between a residential home in Carolina Colors versus an independent living home within this community.
Other than, probably, you said 1 story as opposed to multiple stories.
That's correct. Right now, we do not have a 2-story option planned, but that may be an option in the future.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one question. Approximately how many of the residences would include food within their sign price?
I'm under the impression that all of these include a food, that they're included meals, a certain number of meals within their monthly payment to the.
And that includes the independent living, all phases, all three?
That's
of them?
correct.
Okay. I would think nursing care.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Kendrick, does the overhead projector still have abilities to get connected to where you could put up a couple of the pictures by any chance?
I think that it does, but I'll be absolutely honest, I was not shown how to connect it and put it together.
Hey, fair enough. I wanted to ask just to make sure, because I know we've had to use it a time or two.
I will try to make sure I get some training on that.
Good deal. Yep, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Barb. I am a landscape architect with Stimmel Associates. Our firm has been in business since 1986. I've been there for 33 years, not quite since the beginning. But we are a firm half civil engineers and half landscape architects. And we do work all over North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. I myself am a licensed landscape architect in North Carolina and Tennessee. One of the things that we want to hit upon here is just, again, going through the process with the city. We've gone through the DRC committee, and we've submitted our plans, which Kendrick shared the site plan. So we've received comments back from the public works folks, from all of the folks with stormwater, erosion control, as well as fire safety and electrical. And so for us, we very closely follow what the ordinance is in any city we work in. We speak with planning. We talk to those folks, and in fact, back in April, we had a meeting with a large number of the department heads, so we understood what the needs for this project were. And as we've indicated on slide 14, or page 14, we do have a sense of what that is and how we need to follow. So water and sewer will be provided for each phase. We will speak with the folks relative to how many gallons per day of water is needed, and any types of established agreements that are needed will occur. There'll be a defined limit between the public service and the private, and any connection fees and the code required details will be adhered to. The same for stormwater and erosion control. The lake to the east of the property is a stormwater device, and we are going to deposit a portion of our project into that. As the lay of the land is, we will also have a new stormwater pond central to the campus. And there are currently approvals for that lake, and we'll adhere to those and supply our impervious calculations as needed. There's a number of other regulations with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and that has to do with the wetlands that we have along the southern portion of the site. It's a creek, it's called Lee's Branch, and that is between us and the golf course. So again, all of that would adhere to the current approved plans. We will submit our site plan and make sure that permit that's in place and approved until 2026 is also in compliance. Electrical and site lighting, we met with your folks, and we know that the loads, I think there's a new substation that's being built just south of our site. We would provide what those loads are for each phase, and then there's adequate time for your department to order the equipment and install that. So all those kinds of things are important. The fire marshal, we've had conversations about our drives, our access around the buildings, how the fire trucks will administer the safety of the folks living here, both in the one-story and three-story building. So again, we're complying with the local and state regulations, and any permits that are needed will be obtained. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
Yes, I just have one question.
Yes,
How long do you think, if you approve, that this project will take? How long, how many years, how many months, how many years did it take, you think?
So the initial phase is approximately 2 years for construction, and we're not sure of the exact date of starting. Part of that is why we're here today and get the approvals. So,
Okay. Well, thank you.
yes, sir. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Is someone still to speak on the traffic?
Yes, that is actually the next person. All right. Mr. Chase Smith is coming up.
Good, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chase Smith with Ramey Kemp Associates. Ramey Kemp Associates is a traffic engineering firm based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. We've been around for almost 30 years now and do work in much of the southeast, creep up into the mid-Atlantic states, and several other states as well. I personally have been with Ramey Kemp for about 10 years now, and I'm a licensed professional engineer in North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, Florida, and Mississippi. As Kimberly said, we focused on the traffic engineering portion of this project, so I'll be speaking to the information that you've got on page 16. When we coordinate on these traffic studies, we loop in both the state and local agencies. So we obviously reached out to the city on this one, reached out to NCDOT as well, and NCDOT sort of passed the buck off in terms of scoping up the project to the city, but are also still involved in the project as well as needed. As you'll see on page 16, it's got another breakdown of sort of the phasing for the project as well as the phasing for the traffic study. For the purpose of the traffic study, we broke out phase 1 and looked at that separate from some of the initial phase, future phases, phases 2 through 4, as those have smaller unit counts, sort of less traffic. So we sort of combine those to get a good picture of a breakdown of things. Again, you've got on the right side of that page, you've got a table again of those land uses that are being proposed. And I'll note one thing that Lucas had brought up, or a question was posed to Lucas about the out parcels. And while there is no plan currently for those out parcels, as we do these studies, if an out parcel was part of the project, we've got to take into account some use for it. And for the purpose of this study, we've done that. And those uses that you've got there are not set in stone, but are more there as a placeholder, because those are two of the larger generators of traffic. So not a whole lot of information that I can give, at least to the TIA. I'll give you an idea of the scope that we looked at from one end of Landscape Drive at Old Airport Road to the roundabout at Waterscape Way, and then looked at obviously the site driveways in between. Took into account, I believe it's the Ashton subdivision that's pretty close by and is due to be constructed soon, as well as some additional background growth. Based on the traffic study that we've done, we're not seeing the need for any improvements to Landscape Drive at the side access points, but that's still under review. To that, I'll sort of leave it at that and then take any specific questions if there are any. Yes, sir.
Yeah, probably just two. So, one is the estimate of 3,600
Yes, sir.
trips a day. Is that roughly 1,800 one-way trips, or that?
That would be, yes, that would be roughly 1,800 in, 1,800 out, and that would be over the course of a typical 24-hour day.
Are these estimates based upon not communities with the same population, but people living under the same circumstances, where in many cases they wouldn't be coming and going as often as they would in my neighborhood or someone else?
Right. So, as you can see, it says in the table under the land use, gives the ITE land use code. The ITE is the Institute of Transportation Engineers. And so how we generate traffic for these types of developments, any development really, is each land use is given a specific land use code. You'll get one for a hospital, you'll get one for a bank, you'll get one for a retail center of varying sizes. And all of those, the trips estimated for those specific land use codes are estimated based on studies that have been done nationally. So this is a national standard. Some are based on equations, some are based on trip rates. So essentially you put in your intensity, your density, and it'll spit out a trip approximation for your daily trips, as well as what we would consider the peak hours of the day, which would be, it's a given standard of 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon is generally when the most traffic is on the roadways. So national standard.
Same question. On that table on the bottom, it said fast food restaurant drive-through.
That's right.
Would those be mainly from the outside or from the inside?
I think it a bit of both, I think, and it'll also, some of those trips would also come from traffic that's already on the roadway. So the way that we've done this traffic study is on a conservative manner. Again, those are sort of assumed land uses just to add additional traffic to the road and get a better idea of what the roadways can handle. So the answer is, I think a combination of both internal trips, external trips, and then those external trips could be new folks coming in from other areas as well as traffic that's already on the roadway. So that would actually decrease your new.
I'm more interested in, traffic on the access roads.
Right.
So that's why the question, so
Gotcha.
you've answered it best you can.
Just to add something, we actually have no intention of doing a fast food restaurant there. It wouldn't be a complimentary thing, but we really wanted to do a conservative study, so that's why it's included, but we have no intention.
Well, that's the largest number on the chart.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chairman, so the daycare center is simply speculative or is part of the study?
The daycare center is a strong possibility. It does complement what we do. You can do some really wonderful intergenerational things with older adults and the kids. And it's a great workforce retention and recruitment. We typically subsidize the employees for daycare so that it's more affordable. So that's a very real possibility, but not fast food.
Yeah, I've got two questions for you. The first one, is it possible to relate these trips per day compared to what it would be if it was not a mixed assisted living type facility, if it was a residential facility that had a similar density? Is there any way to do that so we might have a good way to have a judgment?
That's definitely something that we could do. I don't think I could do it right now because I don't have the software in front of me, but that's something that can be done.
Is it as high as it would be if it was a fast food restaurant, since that number's on there, or would it be lower? Just throw me out a maybe or...
So the question, assuming that it's like not senior housing?
Correct.
The non-senior housing multifamily is obviously a higher generator. You've got more car drivers, I think, and they're definitely more condensed during the day, during those peak hours.
Sure.
I'd highly doubt that it'd be higher than our current generation, or her current traffic generation, especially with that fast food in there. I think that more than covers any difference in what that trip count might be.
Okay, fair enough. And the second one I had was with the Highway 70 project going on, is there any way to judge the build-out time to the current 70 project where they might fit together?
I believe I looked when I was sitting over there, and I think the current construction time frame for the Highway 70 project is 2025. So it would be, if that's not done beforehand, it'd be right on line with one another.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, are there any additional questions?
Yeah, I guess one. Okay, this chart is for just like the daily, day-to-day activity. Okay, what happened? Have you taken consideration when it's a holiday or anything, something special going on? How the traffic going to be and
So
stuff?
usually when you're doing traffic studies, they're focused on a typical weekday and typical peak periods. Usually you're not focused on like one-off events or, like you said, holiday timeframes. I'm sure there are circumstances where you would take that into account, but usually you're focused on those days where the most traffic is going to be on the roadway at one time.
Sorry, another question is, I'm fortunate enough not to be in one of these places yet. Would visitors, family coming, is there room within these units to accommodate them, or would they have to be staying somewhere outside and coming and going?
So typically we have one or two guest apartments. So otherwise they would stay with friends and family in the community at large.
How would the daily vehicular traffic change from if the land use code, instead of senior adult housing multifamily, was a nursing care institution?
Was a nursing care?
Institution, yeah.
My guess is that daily traffic would probably decrease, but again, without having that number in front of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you. for
Thank
sure.
you.
Yes, sir.
Well, I think in that case, though, there would be more staff also, so that might offset.
True.
You know, so
Dependent on-
nursing home obviously needs more
Yeah,
staff.
shift, depend on a lot of things, shift structure, a lot of stuff. So,
Do we have any additional questions? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Cal Morgan. I'm a North Carolina Certified General Real Estate Appraiser. My company is J.C. Morgan Company. A little about me. I hold the MAI designation, which is a commercial property appraisal designation. I have the SRA designation, which is a residential property appraisal designation. The AIGRS, which is a appraisal review designation. So I review appraisal for competency for banks, state of North Carolina, et cetera. And I currently serve on the North Carolina Appraisal Board. So I prepared a letter, which I'll read for this hearing. J.C. Morgan Company is a real estate appraisal and consulting firm based in Wilmington, North Carolina. Since 2010, our firm has appraised and consulted on hundreds of properties in eastern North Carolina. The property types we appraise and provide consulting services for include residential, retail, office, multifamily, subdivisions, mixed use, and more. Our client base consists of real estate owners, developers, banks, local and federal governments, attorneys, utility companies, and airport authorities. So I was recently engaged by the applicant to perform research and analysis that would enable me to conclude an opinion as to item 3 of the applicant's special use permit application. Item 3 states, the use will not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. To develop an opinion for this requirement, I researched several comparable senior living communities in North Carolina and the properties that adjoin them. My analysis included reviewing the sales history and sales prices of residential properties that are adjacent to senior living communities, then comparing that data to the sales history and sales prices of similar residential properties in the same subdivision or on the same street that were not adjacent to those same senior living communities. The senior living communities that I reviewed include the following: Cypress Glen and Greenville, Plantation Village in Wilmington, Woodland Terrace in Cary, the Davis community in Carolina Bay and Wilmington. More local senior living communities were also reviewed. However, most are not adjacent to enough properties that have recently sold for any meaningful type of analysis to be completed. Based on the data that I reviewed, there's no indication that being located adjacent to the proposed senior living community would have a negative impact on the adjoining or abutting property values. I also reviewed how the proposed senior living community would conform with the harmony of the neighborhood. The general neighborhood consists of various types of residential properties, including detached, attached, and multifamily housing, a new senior living community, a school, and a multi-tenant retail center. In fact, the master plan for Carolina Colors includes single-family houses, townhouses, apartments, a golf course, retail, and a senior living community. The proposed facility is certainly harmonious with these uses, the Carolina Colors master plan, and the City of New Bern land use plan. In conclusion, it's determined that the proposed senior living community would not substantially reduce the value of adjoining or abutting properties. Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Chairman Tabak, we do have one other witness that's not in the packet there that we'd like to have.
Okay.
It's Ken Kirkman. He represents the owner of the property.
Okay. Eric, just a second too, Ken. There's a fellow in the back. Yeah, just quick.
Just very quick point of clarification. Could you just tell me what you mean by not
Hey,
substantially reduced?
we're going to get everybody to come up and speak later. You might not have been here when we got started, so.
Well, understood. It's a question of clarification. I don't know what.
Yeah, you'll get an opportunity. Sure, just hang on a second. And since we've got you all up, the folks that came in after the sign-up sheet, we're going to have to get you sworn in before you speak also. So we'll get you going. I got you on a note. Thanks. Go ahead. Thanks, Ken.
Mr. Chairman, my name's Kenneth Kirkman. I haven't been able to concentrate because I'm so jealous of your hair. I'd give anything to have hair like that at my age. But back to the subject. My background is I've been an attorney in North Carolina since 1975. I focused my practice primarily on environmental and real estate law. And during that period of time, I evolved into management of real estate development. My experience started with representing the Roosevelt family in the development of the town of Pine Knoll Shores, and then went to managing the Beacons Reach development in the town of Pine Knoll Shores. I left that and took over management of Bald Head Island and the bottom part of the state. I left there to take over the landfall development operation in Wilmington, and I left there and got recruited by Weyerhaeuser to develop the Carolina Colors community. So I've spent many, many years in large eastern North Carolina residential developments. And I'm going to primarily talk a bit factual and a bit professional opinion. Factually, when we put the land use plan for Carolina Colors together 20 years ago, one of the things we wanted to see was an A to Z retirement community. We thought that would complement the other uses and would be something badly needed in the New Bern region as well. We tried very hard for some period of time to recruit such a use. David Swain, who is developing some of the commercial properties, was able to procure the Viridian, which has a couple of small components of what this will be, but is not in any way similar in operation or campus-like facility. So the residents of Carolina Colors, probably as much as anything I've heard since I started it 20 years ago, were asking about having a facility like this and how much they would like to see it. I would say that the vast majority of the residents of Carolina Colors who have contacted me, that includes some of our residents who prefer this not to happen, but the vast majority have expressed a strong opinion in favor of it. In fact, many are asking how they can make a deposit to get in it. It is something that I think is absolutely compatible and consistent with what our vision for this community has been forever, since it started. When I was approached by the Thrivemore people, and they came to us, we didn't go to them, and asked about the availability of this land, I was thrilled, both for the developer's sake and for the community's sake, because it's my professional opinion that this use will not detract from, but will enhance the values of properties in and around this community. I believe strongly that if this community had been developed before the communities around it, that the values of that property would be as great or greater than they are today. And there would be no problem with marketability. All 4 salespeople in the sales office on site are very excited about it because they agree that this will greatly enhance the visibility and marketability of properties in and around it. So we are excited about it on behalf of the community. Professionally, I have complete confidence it will be probably better than alternate uses for this site in terms of the people that look at it and live around it, and it will provide a very necessary and useful benefit to both Carolina Colors and the entire surrounding eastern North Carolina.
Yeah, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I can just one.
Only have one ear, so
pardon
me if I kind
Well, I'm
of
from
tilt my
Brooklyn,
head
so
while you're talking.
I was raised yelling out the windows. My question is, do you have any plan? You're obviously going to have a large staff with many different things going on to support these residents. Do you have anything in place or planned to seek advice from the Carolina Colors Homeowners Association, and where they would be able to interact with your staff where they see, possible problems and so on and so forth.
Admitting a conflict, I'm the president of the Carolina Colors Homeowners Association, and in that capacity, I have been contacted by people for and against it. I think, as I mentioned, that the contacts I've had have been overwhelmingly in support of it. With the people that have expressed concern have been primarily people across the lake that will look at it, and they have expressed concerns. But I do not envision any conflict with the Carolina Colors Association, and certainly we will, as an association, talk to these residents about, and the existing residents, about any possible cooperation that could exist between the two.
I meant on, I didn't mean in the establishment of whether or not to do it. I meant on an ongoing basis, day to day, year to year. Will you have regular meetings with these people to ensure that those who do not support it, maybe, or do have issues as things go along, would be able to address those with the manager?
Yes, I try to talk with the commercial people that are there now. I've met regularly with the Viridian people and with the other operations. We've had a very good working relationship with all of them, Harris Teeter, everybody. And this is certainly not that intensively used. I want to clarify one thing that was said earlier. The time frame for this development is such that they won't begin construction for about 2 years between permitting and marketing, and then it'll take another couple of years to get it occupied. The highway work will be long gone, and there will be no traffic backup, thank God, at the intersection with Highway 70. So that is a problem that will not exist.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay. Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
I would like to just add one footnote. On September 27, we did have a neighborhood meeting with the Carolina Colors people, and we had really good turnout, maybe 150 people, and we were able to show them the design, answer their questions. So we did give them a really good opportunity to get to know us and to show them what we were doing.
Thanks.
Chairman Tabak, I'm gonna finish our presentation. What I would like to do is reserve the opportunity to be able to respond to any kind of opposition that's brought up. I'm gonna talk just a little bit about the last criteria, which is whether the development is gonna be in general conformity with the land use plan, thoroughfare plan, and other adopted plans of the city. And, the first thing I would say is that in North Carolina, the law basically states that if the land use plans include a permitted use in a zoning district, even where that planned use is a special use, then that establishes prima facie case that that use is allowed and that use should be done, as long as the applicant meets the other criteria. And that's what we're showing you today with the testimony of the folks who have preceded me, and then with myself. In your packet, if you look at page, I believe starts on page 20. On page 20 is where there's information about how this plan and how this project is in conformity with the land use plans, especially the future land use plan. I'm not going to go through all of them because we've already spoken for quite some time, and I'm sure there's other people that would like to speak. But some of the important ones are that when New Bern did its land use plan back in 2022, it basically took a look at certain areas that it wanted to focus on. And this is one of those 3 focus areas. This is the US 70 highway focus area. This particular area is zoned R8, as Kendrick told you earlier. That zoning designation allows for all of the proposed uses that are in this staged project. It allows for multifamily, it allows for nursing care, it allows for assisted care, it allows for independent living, And it allows for all of these uses. Some of them are permitted by right, the single-family independent living homes. Some of them are with the special use permit, but that's why we're here today. It meets all of the suitability requirements that are set forth in the land use plan. There's a specific section that talks about suitability requirements. There are no environmental restrictions on this property that would affect it. The water and sewer is available from the city and will be, the developer will be working with the city on that. It's going to be close to major roads, including the new Highway 70 interstate or 42 interstate. It's close to major employers. You have Cherry Point on the one side, and you have all the employers in New Bern on the other side. And then it's close to fire and rescue, which are already established out in that area. And then it conforms with, there's, a series, as you all know from your work on this committee, that there is a series of land use recommendations that are within that. And if you turn to page 21, what I've done is I've looked at all of those and I've said how this project complies with those. The first one where it says LUD, that's land use development, and then there are different criteria, and you will see that this project fits just about all of them. The ones that are probably not in there are things that didn't apply to this particular project. Again, I'm not going to go through all of those, but they're there for you. The next section is IF recommendations. Those are for infrastructure, is what that stands for. One of the, like for instance, one of the factors is can public transportation be added? Right now, all of the CARTS routes are downtown, but you could have a CART route that goes out to the Carolina Colors and to Bern area and hits this particular community, and then they could come into town and shop downtown and things. The site's going to have walking paths and trails, as Lucas Shaw talked about, and some of the other folks that have been up here. And there's going to be, basically the site is going to have adequate parking, as you see by the plans and all that kind of stuff. So the infrastructure has been talked about, and it meets the plans. EP is environmental preservation. And if you'll note on the plans, actually there are areas within the project where they're going to preserve the trees, and they're going to, they've got the buffer areas along the blue line streams and things like that that are going to have to be preserved based on the rules and regulations of the, North Carolina. But they're also going to, just within the internal part of the site, they want it to be beautiful. They want it to have good landscaping and things and have walking trails for the residents and stuff. So they're going to preserve areas in there. The last one is ED, which is economic development, and you'll see that it actually, again, it's in this focus area, which has a specific designation within it of an opportunity zone. And that opportunity zone is designed to be developed into commercial area. And that is essentially around the Harris Teeter and where the Viridian is and place like that. It's just to the side of where this community would be. This, I can't think of a better place for this community because people can ride their bike or walk to the Harris Teeter if they wanted to from their independent living house or from their shop, from the multifamily house. But a lot of the services that they will need will be right there on the property. So again, I've gone through all of those and basically said how it is. It does conform with the future land use plan because it is within that opportunity zone and it's within the focus area that New Bern is planning on. And then the last diagram I have there is the circular area that is designated as that opportunity zone, and you can see where that is in relation to the property. Okay. Again, we'd like to reserve time to come up and speak after the opposition speaks, if anybody speaks in opposition. And we're happy to answer any kind of questions that you all have about the project. But that's going to conclude our initial presentation. I would like to ask that these materials be added to the record.
Do we have any additional questions by the board?
I have two questions. Will the independent living apartments or anywhere in the development provide, will they be providing any type of skilled nursing care or medical supervision?
In the independent living part, I don't believe so. You know, again, I think this is a staged community, so you go from the independent living where you don't need that type of care into the more multifamily part of it where it's more of an apartment living, and that you can get assisted living in and things like that. And then there's an actual healthcare as that part of it where you can actually receive, you know, physical therapy, you can receive medical treatment, that kind of thing.
Which will all be within the proposed use within the development?
Yes, all in that development in different buildings, you know, of course, with the single-family cottages and then the bigger buildings that are going to have the apartment living plus the medical facilities and things like that.
And what is, do you know for the single-family units, what the lot sizes will be for that?
I don't think they have a lot, do they?
So this is all one contiguous campus, so there's no individual
Okay.
lots between.
It's more of like a condo kind of setup where they're living in the home, but the grounds and everything around the home are maintained by the community, you know, by the Thrivemore.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Yes, Mr. Duffy?
Yes, I have one for one of the other gentlemen, really, I think, who's more experienced in running these places. Would these residents in the independent living or assisted living section, they would still be eligible for nursing care visits under Medicare and Medicaid, so on and so forth, if they're eligible, right?
Yes, so if there's a health issue and they end up in the hospital, many times they'll qualify for Medicare support back in our community. So it's short-term rehab, and we would provide that on campus.
And possibly hospice at home and those things?
Yeah,
Thank you.
hospice for sure. Yeah.
So, sorry.
Yeah, we would contract
More
for it.
information.
Any additional questions? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one note for the record. I think Mr. Remington, the applicant, have asked if the binders that have been distributed to you all with the 4 tabs containing the presentation and the resumes and other information be included in the record. If we could just note for the record that you have received that information and are including it in the record, that would be helpful.
Yeah, sure, noted. Do we need to do any vote? or-
No, sir,
Okay,
just noting
noted
that for
it's
the record.
Received and as a record.
Thank you, Chair.
And
Yeah.
also, Mr. Chair, if you're transitioning now to public comments, you might begin with individuals who were notified at this meeting, meaning they received a letter in the mail, their property owners within a certain distance. Begin with those individuals and then proceed as you see fit.
Yep, thank you. And what I would like to do also as we get started, I know there was at least 4 people that came in after we did the original swearing in. So if some of those 4 people or all are going to speak, what we'd like to do is get you sworn in now so I don't have to try to keep track of who came in and who didn't and who signed up and who didn't. So, yeah, so if you would.
While they're signing in, I'd like to, for the record, make one clarification. The notice that was sent out by the city included the entire tax parcel, which included far more land than is actually part of this application, and it included Carolina Lake. That is all in error. I talked to Scott Davis about it at length. He decided you didn't need to renotice because you were notifying too many people as opposed to not enough. But just be aware the notification was sent out to far more people than were required to receive it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. And yeah, I guess that's good for us. We'll get more comment.
The requirement, I think, is for everybody whose land is within 100 feet. That was definitely met, is that right?
But the map showed
Yeah.
a property that's way away from this.
I'm not saying it wasn't more, but at least the statutory requirement was met.
Way exceeded the statutory.
No, I see copies of the letters. So.
And also, Mr. Chair, just as a point to be helpful, this is a hearing where people can present evidence. So if individuals have comments or evidence that they want to offer, that would certainly be appropriate. Individuals who have questions, you can deal with that in your discretion, but this is your opportunity to receive evidence from members of the public.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what I'd also like to try to do, once you get the swearing in part taken care of here in just a second, if y'all would come up and go through the process and ask the questions and try to stay orderly with it, we'll try to address all the questions after everybody comes up and not try to do one question, one address, one question, one address. Otherwise, it's going to be very timely getting people to stand up and sit down. So please try to come forward. We'll go through all the folks that we'll use the word, or against first, and that'll give the folks that did the presentation time to do their rebuttal, and then we'll do the ones for, and we'll try to keep it all orderly in that manner. So again, the ones that we had that came in late, did everybody sign in? And anybody want to speak of those folks? Okay, so we only got one more. Here we go. Let me get my page back right so we can get your hand up and get you sworn in here. Okay. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. We're good to go. We'll start in the front row, I guess, and Craig?
Tim? My name's Craig Hearn. I live at 3445 Old Airport Road. I've lived there for 35 years. My dad was Mickey Hearn, died in 2001. He bought that property. It was the old Bray Farm from Weyerhaeuser in the late 70s. My mom still lives there for 50 years. My dad was kind enough to give each of his 3 sons a parcel on that property on that farm. And he sold lots to Linda Povich and Peter right across the street. We'll butt right up to this new property thing that's going on. And so I'm born and raised right here in New Bern, North Carolina. I'm very much invested in this community. I'm not an expert. I've heard a lot of experts up here. I really didn't like the tone of the letter, that we're not going to listen to anybody but what the experts have to say. I'm coming from a practical standpoint about what it actually is to live in this community and to experience the traffic and the substantial, hey, if this thing's going up and I don't want to live there.
Excuse me, sir. Can you direct your comments to the board? There's a hearing that we're taking in your evidence.
So I'm just talking to you.
You can look to the whole board, but it's to us, please.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm a school teacher.
You're
I'm
good.
a school teacher and a preacher and a grass cutter. Okay? But anyway, I've lived out there myself. We've raised 2 sons out there for 40 years. I've seen things happen over the last several decades that I couldn't believe happened. The 2 main routes to and from the city of New Bern or Havelock, if we want to go to New Bern or if we want to go to Havelock, those roads, Old Airport Road was sacrificed to Taberna. I was there before Taberna, Carolina Colors. This thing is all about Carolina Colors. There are some of us here that don't live in Carolina Colors. And we live very close to where this is going to be happening. Wilcox Road and our friends just up the road on Wilcox Road, we used to ride our bicycles to see the Manette's. No longer available. In fact, when I go to Carolina Colors and I step foot on the property, I've been told, unless you're a member here, unless you live here, you have no business here and you have to leave. And so that's not too very friendly. My front yard has been ripped up so many times to put lines and cables and water and sewer. And the city has always said, we're going to put this right back the way we found it. Never has it been the case. You will argue for how that there's going to be no impact on the neighboring communities and all that. But you're talking to someone who has lived it, who has experienced it. I've had to put it back in place. I've had to deal with the traffic. Carolina Colors, for example. My mom has 5 acres out there. My dad bought it from someone over there on Furman Road. 5 acres that butts up. It's over across the street from Harris Teeter. Carolina Colors came in and built a berm around the whole property, flooded the property, killed all the timber on the property. That's the kind of neighbors they have been, at least the developers, to us. Remember listening to Miss O'Field, the poor little lady on the other street down Wilcox, and how the Carolina Colors impacted her. Let me tell you something. I showed you, Tim. I brought you over to Lee's Ranch. You guys keep talking about Lee's Ranch. It flows right beside my house. I've seen it bright green from the chemicals, from the golf maintenance people. I don't know how they've dumped it in there, but they've dumped it bright green, that Lee's Ranch. Environmental experts, take notes. This past Saturday, I think it's my turn.
Mr.
This
Chair,
past Saturday, my wife and I were on our way to the dump.
There's an issue we need to deal with. I think the testimony has been that there's some communication between this witness and yourself. we need to unpack that to determine if there's any type of conflict.
I'm just telling, he's a neighbor of mine, and I showed him one time, or maybe I showed him a picture. I don't know, Tim, if you even got to see it, but I remember trying to bring it to your attention one time.
Just for the record, so we can deal with
Yes.
that issue first, if we can note Mr. Mr. Remington's objection,
Okay,
he stood,
gotcha.
and to just unpack this a little bit, you and the chairman are neighbors, correct?
We're neighbors,
Okay, and when you talked about taking him out to Lee's Branch,
right on the road, it's right there, playing
and
for everybody to see.
have you done that in relation to this application?
No, this was years ago.
All right, have you spoken?
It's just the impact of the Carolina colors. I have never come and talked to you all. This stuff, it just happens, and I've just dealt with it.
Right,
These
we
folks
just-
are my neighbors, and I like these people.
Understood. We just want to make sure for the record that we appropriately address the issue. Have you spoken with the chairman at all regarding this particular special use
Absolutely
permit
not. I didn't even know
application?
he was here. I had no clue he was going to be here.
All right.
Mr. Remington, is there anything else you want to add on that issue?
Not on that issue, but I
Oh.
have another objection.
You have another objection?
Yes, I mean, on that issue, I think we're fine, but I mean, again, this is not relating to this project. Thrivemore is not Carolina colors.
They've talked about Lee's Branch. They've talked
hang on.
about being right on Lee's Branch and butting up to it. I'm just saying that
Craig, hang on.
impacts are impacts.
The challenge we're up to now is they're addressing a potential conflict of interest because we are neighbors. And then two, we're also addressing the testimony for the particular project. So
Okay.
let's let them kind of get through this.
Okay,
and
well, let it
we'll
flow,
kind
and
of-
let's forget about it.
So,
Mr.
no,
Chair,
I don't want to forget about it, but I want to make sure that we get everything done properly so we don't have any
I
hiccups.
think we've moved past the conflict. I
Yes.
think the other objection is just the relevancy of the testimony as it relates to this particular application and this particular property and the use. Is that correct?
That and also that he's speaking to traffic and also, things like that. And he, under North Carolina law, he can't speak to that.
So it's just the objection is that,
He doesn't have a proper foundation.
all right. So that's noted. I think, and Chair, I'll let you jump in. I just want to make sure we have the clear record so that you can continue with your testimony.
This property that this thing that you're about to do comes right up to this lady, and she and her husband bought property from my dad and come right in their backyard. Saturday, I saw the most beautiful 10-point buck I never seen a deer like that. Came from her yard to the neighbor's yard. Guess where talk about environmental impacts. Guess where that buck lives? In this forest that y'all are about to tear down.
Again,
I don't
think
have
Mr.
to
Speaker
be an
needs
expert to
direct
relate
his
the
comments
facts
to the
of
chair
what
to the
I've seen
board.
with mine own
Craig,
eyes.
hang on one
We
second.
concerned citizens
Hang on,
also,
Give me a minute. Give me a minute. I gotta do
we also,
My comment was, Mr. Chair, that any speakers need to address their comments to the board, not to any other entities present in the room.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I guess
Okay,
where
let
we're
me-
going, let's
let me
try
say
to.
that, I got one last thing to say.
Okay,
There's several people here. A lot of us are the backbone of this community. We pay taxes. I'm about to send a check for my home taxes, for my house property. And, we have a stake in the decision that you all are about to make. That's going to really impact us. You can, say what they will. It's going to impact us in a huge way. In such a way that some of us may just not want to live where we live, regardless of the substantial or non-substantial effect upon the real estate. And I'm going to ask you guys this question, because this is what I've seen, this is what I've experienced, is that these golf courses that have popped up, and these roads that have been destroyed, and decisions that have been made, we really need people who govern for the people. The people who are already here, who are already paying taxes. We don't need people who are going to govern in spite of us. Who are you going to be? That's my question. Who are you going to be? This is really going to impact us.
yep. Thank you. Do we have another, next person to come up and speak?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
And as we go through, please try to address specific topics like.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Distinguished board members, distinguished guests, my name is Dave Ledoux. I live at 4006 Tyler Ryan Trail in New Bern. I see you walk your dog there quite a bit. I just have a couple of questions that I hope are addressed, and I don't want to be out of order or whatever. One of the questions is, how many levels is the highest building going to be? I heard reference to, we haven't decided that yet, but possibly in the future. No, I want to know now, because I don't want to go out in my backyard in 4 years and look up at a structure in my backyard. The builder that I bought the house from probably didn't know at the time, but he said to me, nobody can build back there because it's wetlands. There's a creek back there. And I just heard about this, one of my neighbors put out flyers. I just learned about this a couple of days ago, so it's been a crash course. A lot of hours trying to figure things out. I've only been in New Bern a year and a half. Absolutely love New Bern. And can only speak to a few things. The drainage. You can go on the state website. If you put the cursor in the middle of the said development, the elevation is 22 feet. The elevation at the creek, Lee's Branch, is approximately 11 feet. So what's going to happen with the runoff, as my neighbor said, that ends up in Lee's Branch, which dumps into Bryce's Creek? Again, I'm not an expert, but I hope that common sense dictates when it comes down to stuff like that. And I applaud you, sir, for your company and what you do. My mom's 93 and has dementia, so I applaud your concept and the company's mission as to what you want to do. As you understand, we're just going to
Again, just for all the,
I know, I just want to thank him for.
No, I understand that. Just for the purpose of this is a hearing that we take evidence, and your testimony is what we're considering, so we just need
Yes,
all
sir.
comments directed to the board.
I apologize. I just wanted to.
No apology necessary.
Not be all negative about the whole thing, so. As far as traffic patterns go, the gentleman was up here earlier, I don't recall his name. He used a.
Hang on one second. Yes, sir, so noted.
I live there. Do you live there?
Mr. Chair, I think it'd be
Okay.
appropriate for,
I live there. I drive the
Mr.
Parakeet all
Chair,
the time.
it's a,
Hang on one second.
Okay. Can I speak? Correct. I know, common sense
Mr.
is
Chair,
a superpower.
there's an objection raised by
on.
Mr. Remington
Yes.
as to a lay witness providing testimony as to traffic impacts. There is case law that indicates what is competent evidence and what is not. However, if you all are inclined to hear lay testimony on the issue of traffic, you then, during your deliberations, will need to determine whether that information is competent evidence and whether it shifts the balance or presumption that you all need to consider tonight. So I think it's appropriate to note Mr. Remington's objection to the lay testimony on this issue, and if you are inclined, you can allow the gentleman to conclude his comments.
Yeah, so we're trying to speak
That was
through-
just a prelude. I'll speed it up.
Yeah,
That was
you're
just a
good.
prelude of what the
And-
questions I want to propose to you as the board to answer.
And let me take one other second, since we're going the board, do you all understand where we are with that as far as what's testimony and what's opinion, I guess, in a way, and what's an expert?
I think the issue, and just so everyone is aware, North Carolina law requires that when it comes to issues of traffic, as well as the economic impact of the surrounding parcels, that those two pieces of, those two aspects of what we're supposed to consider, only an expert can opine on. So that's why we keep hearing these objections. I believe it is in this board's interest to note the objection, and I think it can be a continuing objection as to those two pieces so that we can get through all of the speakers, allow each speaker to do your testimony just as written and just as presented, and let you tell us your opinion. But when we deliberate, we will have to discuss that opinion and the lack of a foundation for it being an expert opinion. Is that understood?
I get it.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
fair
you.
enough. That's fine, I understand. I wasn't exactly certain when I came in what the ground rules were gonna be.
And
So-
just,
One
Mr.
more.
Remington,
Yeah, and I'm fine with noting a continuing objection to that. I don't want to limit it to just the impact value and the traffic analysis, because it's anything that would require an expert opinion.
as well as anything that requires an expert opinion under North Carolina law.
May
I think
I
that's a
ask,
continuing
Can the
objection.
board, is the board, in making this decision, can the board consult with a professional? Because I'm not a professional.
The board.
So if I bring up a question, are they able to say, okay, it's a good question, we'll consult with somebody and make our decision?
The board is going to consider the evidence presented in testimony tonight and the evidence in the record.
Okay, thank you. So the gentleman compared national standards when doing the traffic study for in and around the area. My simple question to him or to the board would be, did he take into account the 120 residents that are now going in north of Landscape, right across from this facility? Did he also take into account the 800 to 1,000 homes that are being built in Blue Water Rise, 2 miles down Airport Road, and the only way to get out of there is up Airport, right past this development? Were those taken into consideration? So if those folks want to go to Harris Teeter, guess where they're going to have to go? Sorry, that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, and so what we're going to have the opportunity to do is, once everybody finishes, they will address exactly the questions that you've asked, to where we can actually have an opportunity to hear how that presentation was put together, that
Okay.
was done by the professional.
And again, I
we'll
have
find out.
mainly questions, because I want to
Sure.
keep it professional.
And that's
above
what we'd
board.
like, so we can have
The
questions.
address of the development was listed as being on Old Airport Road. I don't even see that this property abuts Old Airport Road. And the entrance to the facility is going to be on Landscape.
Yes, to my knowledge, and we could address that also.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So in accordance with the Craven County tax records, that's the address that's listed. So when I'm preparing these materials, I have to go in accordance to what's on the Craven County tax records. It very well could be a mistake. I had a previous question from another gentleman who had explained something similar, but at that time, based on what Craven County tax records presents, that's what I have to go off of.
Okay, is that going to be corrected? I'm just curious if it's going to be corrected. Just a question.
That part I can't answer. I can say, as a person that does forestry work from time to time, and that's what I retired from, that happens with land records. When there's a tract of land that's big, and how Mr. Hearn described it, the parcel was split up.
Yes.
That was the original potentially deed, and that's where its address was. And so for all these years, Craven County has decided to leave that address. It happens regularly all over the state of North Carolina and other states also. But I can't answer that. That's an opinion that I've granted, and maybe they can address that a little bit better.
Okay. I know a lot of people have questions, so I'll make this short and sweet. I just have a couple more questions, and I'll leave the podium. We use national standards to apply to the traffic patterns and the change in the traffic patterns. We used other locations for the impacts for the real estate and values. Have the other locations that Thrivemore owns, have we done studies in and around them for economic impact, traffic impact, property values around those locations? It's apples and apples, it's not oranges and oranges. We're not taking a national standard from Montana that might have input, rather than New Bern or other parts of North Carolina. That's my point for that. They're going to have city water and sewer and so forth?
It's my understanding anyway. I think
Okay.
that's what's been, and maybe Kendrick can answer to that again also.
I can't confirm it. I would just probably hold that. The applicant
Okay.
could probably confirm.
Are there going to be hydrants there in case, for emergency purposes in the development in case there's a fire?
So a lot of these questions, sir, they get answered in our departmental review committee. It's a process that this applicant also has experience. I can't speak to differences of certain experts like fire departments, or excuse me, like the fire department. They would kind of look at that, fire marshals and those type of gentlemen.
I mean, I would hope it would make sense to put fire hydrants in the
I understand the applicant did go through that process, so they would have received comments, is what I'm getting at, from those different agencies or departments.
Okay, so they're gonna have city services and so forth, fire department, police, water, sewer. I know there are they're tax exempt, are they gonna be paying city taxes?
Again, we can't speak to that, we're not the experts for those fields particularly, so.
Okay, is there anyone I could write to get an answer to that?
That may be the tax department, sir.
I guess that's all I got. I just wanted to ask for a show of hands of who actually lives around the proposed development. And I know that people here from Carolina Colors, but.
Again, Mr. Chair.
Live around the development as well. And we all would like to be heard. Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chairman, I have a question of the gentleman before he leaves.
Yeah, sure.
You said you did not receive a letter,
Did not.
so you are not in the area that you should have received a letter. How did you hear about this?
One of my neighbors that did receive a letter, was going around the neighborhood and saying, did you hear about this? Did you hear about the development? No one was notified. On Tyler Rhine, Sir James, which are all abut. Sir James does not, but they are off of Tyler Rhine, which is on the south part of the proposed development.
So I guess
So I
maybe
can
this is
speak
time
to
to
that.
describe what the abutment means, the
So-
definition.
Yes, sir. Excuse me, yes, Mr. Chairman. So in accordance with what we have in our ordinance, we have to notify from 100 feet of the actual surrounding parcel, and that notification was processed by myself. And I can tell you to the best of my ability and knowledge, there was a buffer taken from the outskirts of those property lines, and whoever fell within that 100-foot buffer was notified.
My only response to that is if they were building a Walmart 200 feet from your house, would you want to get a letter?
Sir, I can't speak.
I know. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate
And
it.
Mr. Chair, just as a clarifying point, I think the gentleman was not a notified opponent, so just bear that in mind for later in your deliberations.
Yeah, thank you. And so we were trying to go through the notified opponents first, and so are there any notified ones that haven't spoke yet? Okay, so I
I
guess,
think it would be appropriate for this gentleman to just confirm when he gives his address that he received a letter
Yes,
about
please.
the meeting.
yeah, so please, yeah, let us have the name and address since we're not a,
All right, Mr. Chairman and board members, I'm Aaron Clark. I live at 3420 Old Airport Road. My property is adjacent to Carolina Colors. I share property irons with them. This development.
Did you receive a letter, sir?
We did, after we asked for it.
Okay.
We had to reach out to the city. We had heard through word of mouth about this development, and we had to reach out to the city to ask about it. We were then sent a letter. So we had no idea until about maybe a week or maybe a couple of weeks ago or something like that. I don't know what the date on the letter is. But once I got the letter, I informed some of my neighbors who also were not informed and that also live adjacent to this property. The development would directly impact my property because I learned this evening that we have a 50-foot riparian buffer on either side of the ditch, which runs between my property and Carolina Colors. 50 feet of that riparian buffer now goes into my yard. Now I'm losing access to my own property that I paid for. I did not move into this property to donate 50 feet of my land to Thrivemore development.
yeah, can we,
I object to that because that's not what a riparian buffer is. We have nothing to do with that. That's something that the state imposes.
yeah, so, yes, sir. Please, so noted, and is there a way that a person can explain the Neuse River Basin rules on a blue line stream at this point? Is
There's
there-
an opportunity for the applicant to provide any rebuttal evidence that they'd like.
Okay, so should we try to address that now or wait until?
It's in your purview, Mr. Chair. There have been a number of questions posed, and I think the previous instruction was that you would deal with questions at the end, but that's within your purview.
I prefer to stay that way. So, yeah, please make a note that that is a question that's going to be addressed. Yeah, thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right, now we cannot address traffic, so I have to ask a question. Was it not stated tonight that there would be 36 additional trips on on Landscape Drive? Was that not stated?
3,600 was the daily total.
3,600 was the daily
Daily total. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so I understand that correctly. There would be an additional 3,600 trips daily on Landscape Drive?
We'll let them address that again here in a
Okay, so
second.
that's a significant question because that's 3,600 trips more than what we have now. So I've looked at the area, and over the years, it appears that the homes that are affected in this area are approximately 122 homes. 122 homes. Over the years, we have in our area, we have increased the growth rate, and I believe the traffic study that Thrivemore had developed indicated a growth rate of about 1.3%. From what I see in our area, with the Bryce's Crossing, with the Blue Water Rise Crossing, with the construction of Carolina Colors, the additional construction on Old Airport Road, Tyler Ryan Road, which abuts immediately to Carolina Colors, it looks to me like we have more than 300% growth rate. More than a 300% growth rate as it is right now. If I include the additional homes in Bryce's Crossing and in Blue Water Rise, that goes well over a 400% growth rate. With the Thrivemore development, we would have over a 600% growth rate in our neighborhood and 3,600 additional daily trips on Landscape Drive. I don't see how that would make my neighborhood safer. We have a lot of bicyclists. We have a bicycle lane that the city provided on Old Airport Road. A lot of people take advantage of that. And the quality of life is an important thing in your neighborhood. You want to be able to feel safe when you go outside of your home. You want to be able to partake in healthy activities. Ride your bike down the road and a bicycle lane has been provided for you. How will this additional traffic make that safer for me or my family or my neighbors? I don't see how that's going to happen. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm 60 years old. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in construction management. I've been in construction since I retired from the Marine Corps. I retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years of service. I've been in construction now for 23 years. I don't understand how that's going to increase the safety of my neighborhood. I fail to see that. And I've tried hard, and I've read through the traffic study, and I cannot understand that. The traffic study was presented by a firm that appears to be out of Winston-Salem. Do we have any local representatives here in New Bern that represent our interests? I've heard from a lot of people tonight that represent the interest of Thrivemore, from the Raleigh area, from the Winston-Salem area, all these so-called professionals. Who represents me? Who represents my family and my neighbors? Where's my representation? I have to live with this. Has anybody given that any thought about my quality of life, my family's quality of life, the quality of life of my neighbors? Has anybody given that any thought when we talk about 3,600 more daily trips? Not in a week, not in a month, not in a year, daily. Who's given that any thought? How about my safety? I'll tell you something. I'm a subject matter expert. I am a professional expert when it comes to the topic of my own personal safety. I am a resident expert, a certified, verified subject matter expert when it comes to my quality of life. When I walk outside of my backyard and I've got a 50-foot riparian buffer in the yard and I can see high-rise development that is not in harmony with the neighborhood. I live in a single-story, double-story residential neighborhood. There are not high-rise developments in my neighborhood. High-rise, high-density development does not exist in my neighborhood. It would not be in harmony with the neighborhood. Now, high-rise, high-density development does exist on the opposite side of Waterscape. On the opposite side of Waterscape, when you come out of the Harris-Teeter, nice development over there, nice commercial development, very convenient to the residents, and you walk outside and you see the Hudson, a high-density, high-rise development. And you look over and you see the Viridian for elderly folks, another high-rise, high-density development. Now, in that area, that kind of fits. I guess that's been zoned for that, and it fits over there. But in my neighborhood, how is that harmonious in my neighborhood? And I'm going to tell you, I'm the subject matter expert in my own harmony. There is nobody in this room. I don't care if you're a North Carolina registered professional engineer you can't tell me how my harmony feels to me. Nobody in this room can do that. You can be an NCARB registered architect, a member of the AIA. You can't tell me what feels harmonious to me when I walk outside of my backyard and I'm looking at lights. Go out tonight when you get out of here. Go over to Harris Teeter and look at all those bright lights on the Hudson. Imagine that in your backyard. I cringe at the thought of that. I cringe at the thought that people would even come here tonight and think that that would be acceptable. There are 122 homes in my neighborhood. The Viridian has added 105 new homes. The Hudson has added 240 new homes. The Aston, which is now in progress in Carolina Colors neighborhood, is adding 125 more homes. Thrivemore will contribute, according to their study, 388 more homes. In total, 858 more homes. 376% growth rate since 2019 in my neighborhood. 376% growth rate in my neighborhood. The Thrivemore study says 1.3%. Now, what subject matter expert came up with that? You could go to Google Earth and you could count the houses, and you could see what's out there. Numerator over denominator, figure out the percentage. Environmental presentation was brought up tonight. I'm not an environmental engineer, so I can't speak to that, but somebody needs to. Somebody needs to do an environmental impact study. Commercial zoning. I heard the Thrivemore people talk tonight about how the area was zoned for commercial. In a residential neighborhood, in my residential neighborhood, we've got commercial development. Is the zoning correct for that?
That's a land use in that general area. The zoning for is R8, which does allow for multifamily.
And that would include a fast food restaurant, which was proposed for the corner. Now, I believe I heard testimony tonight saying that that was conjecture, that we're actually not going to do that. But you know, when you let this thing run loose, how do you know what's going to happen? They've already put in the study and they said that's what they're going to do. So I'm going to take them for their word at that.
An application for rezoning to, from R8 to C, commercial use, would not even come to this board.
All right, very good.
We're just limited to the special use permit and the impact of this special use permit.
Thank you for that
this
clarification,
project
Mr.
alone,
Duffy.
not other additional projects. So by law, we're limited to that. Maybe the attorney could explain.
Thank you, sir.
So, but that, if they wanted to rezone, that would be entirely special, and that process would be reviewed by the Board of Aldermen.
Now, the drainage. Let's talk about the drainage for a minute. We talked about an environmental impact study. We talked about some civil engineering out here. I'm not a registered professional civil engineer. I'm not a resident expert, but I can ask the question, though. How about the drainage? How does that impact the drainage in our neighborhood? The drainage ditch that runs by my house is going to have a 50-foot riparian buffer on each side. Who studied that? Who from the city of New Bern has studied that? We know that Thrivemore has their development. They're going to tell you everything is perfect. They're going to tell you that everything is perfect. Everything you've heard from these people tonight, it's perfect. They've come from a long way to get here, many of them. One gentleman said something about Iowa. Other people here are from Winston-Salem and Raleigh. What do they know about my neighborhood? I've been where I live since 2018 when Hurricane Florence came through here. We all remember Hurricane Florence. We all remember the impact it had on this city and how people had to come together and the suffering that we had in this city. They didn't suffer. We did. In this city, we did. My ditch was dry during Hurricane Florence. I was very lucky. Blessed by God. The ditch in the front of my house, though, the city of New Bern tore it up. I was able to go out with a lawnmower and mow my ditch until the city of New Bern came and fixed it.
In the essence of time, have we getting pretty close to the end of the testimony?
I have one final comment to make, and I thank you all for your patience. And also, I would like to compliment the people from Thrivemore. I don't want to come out here and just sound like the angry neighbor, get off my lawn. I do appreciate what they're doing. We do need housing for the elderly. We do need that. We don't need it in that particular neighborhood. We need it where the zoning would be more appropriate for it. Where the Hudson is, where the Viridian is, but not in a residential area. That's not the right place for this. It's a good idea. And God bless these people. They have a good product, I think. But wrong area. The wrong area for this development. Thank you very much for your time.
Yep, thank you. Kendrick, I have a question also as we can proceed on. Talking about the notifications, do you have an idea of how many folks are city versus county and where the line is between the city and the county around Old Airport Road and Tyler Ryan and all?
So I can't really speak to what the separation was, but for the notification, if I can recall, I want to say there were 73 mail outs that were sent, if that's what you're meaning.
Fair
That's
enough.
what I can recall.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. Yes, sir, please name and address.
Yeah. My name is Tom Milet. I'm at 3014 Watercrest Loop in Carolina Colors.
Did you receive a letter, sir?
I did.
Very good.
Yep, thank you.
I'm probably the closest to the new development that's in Carolina Colors, one of the closest. And first let me say that I knew this was going to be developed. I knew it was going to be residential. I have no problem with that. Certainly have no problem with Mr. Kirkman wanting to sell the property. That's what he's in business for. And I have no problem with Thrivemore wanting to buy the property because he wants the same view that I do, to see the lake. But I do have a few issues. And I have a couple of points from people who've already presented on there. One was a young lady said that it was a quarter mile from across the lake to the big buildings on there. Where I live, it's not. Only there, from the back of the building, from the back of the lake. And I'm looking at the book you've got, and I'm looking tab 3, 6, page 6 on there, which shows the site plan. And I am right off of Landscape Drive to get to my house, to the back of the lake. But she had mentioned that it was a quarter mile. And I know she's right from where she's doing it, but she's doing it from the very back of the site plan to the big building back here. I'm up here at the very front, so I would probably say it's probably half that distance on there. The other one though, that somebody testified to was on the traffic study about nothing needs to be done at Landscape Drive. I take point with that, and I say that because of the school entrance off Landscape Drive. 2 times a day, you can't get by that because the parents dropping off and picking up their kids on there. When you're going to add the additional traffic that's coming through here, it's just going to make that worse on there. There is no right turn lane coming down Landscape toward Airport Road to turn into the school. Traffic blocks there in the morning, in the afternoon. Coming from Airport Road back toward the school entrance, the traffic is blocked there because there's no left turn lane in there. So when he said that there was nothing that needs to be done to that intersection, I think we might need to look at that. The other part of that is their main entrance is going on Landscape Drive. And if you're going down Landscape toward Airport Road, there's a marker that says school zone. Their entrance is going to be right into that school zone on there. We have no sidewalks on that road. We have no street lights. We have no bike trails on that road on there. And then you're going to increase the traffic there. My other concern is the lighting. You know, if you've been through Colors, you see Viridian, you can sit out in the parking lot and you can read a newspaper at midnight on there. So I'm a little concerned by that. And I think maybe they could do something with the lighting as far as at least having lights that shine down and not so much up. But the light pollution there, when you look out my back door, I'm going to see all this. I don't want to see it lit up like daylight on there. And then the other last one, and the biggest concern to me, is the buildings. If you're looking at your map, it's in the yellow, and it's an H-shaped building. The first part coming in off Landscape Drive there, backing up to where I live, that building is huge. I mean, it is just huge. And I'm going to give you an example on there, something that we all see driving around. The Bridgepoint Motel down there. This building that they're putting up, the first part of this, is the Bridgepoint Motel is 4 stories. It's flat roof. Their buildings are going to be 3 stories with an A roof. So it's about the same height on there as the Bridgeport. This first building is going to be 3 times that size on there. It's going to dwarf that area. The back side is even going to be bigger on there. And the cottages that they're going to build up front on there, you can't help but be able to see this building. And that's my problem. It's just huge. You can't hide it, no matter how hard you try. If you go to tab 3, page 11, it shows the artist rendering. And on the bottom is kind of what I'm going to be seeing, this bottom page here. What it doesn't show you behind that is what's on top at there, the big 3-story building with the roof, which basically 4 stories. It doesn't show you any of that behind these cottages. You can't help but not see that. So that's a really big issue for me. I mean, we all bought the lake for the view. We all paid bigger dollars for the lake view. And I understand it was going to be developed. I have no problem with it being regular residential. I do have it being a problem with it being high-density homes. So, I mean, at the very least, if the board in their wisdom sees to grant them this permit, if there's any way to put a stipulation that the larger pine trees around these larger buildings should be left up to make this at least somehow blend in somewhat these huge buildings. You know, I would certainly appreciate that. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Gail Beers, and I did get the letter. I live at 2812 Waterleaf Point in New Bern. My backyard is about 250 feet from the single-story residence around the lake. And I do have a concern, and many of the people that live on the lake have a concern. And in fact, we solicited about 100 signatures in Carolina Colors that have similar concerns that I'm going to bring up. And I'll boil it down to 2. And Tom has brought up basically both of those already. And it deals with how the development will fit in with the Carolina Colors community. We would like, if there's any way to put any special conditions in approving this, dealing with trees and dealing with lighting. Let's cover lighting first. What we don't want is a new development looking like Trent Cadillac parking lot, because we have to look onto that property. We'd like to have the lights, if you approve the requirements, have the lights being shown down and very low intensive lights. We realize you have to have lights for safety, but we just don't want lights broadcasting out because we have to look at them right out of our back door. The second point is the trees. 3 developments or 3 parcels in Carolina Colors have been clear cut. And that is a real concern of everyone in the community, that this will also be clear cut. So I would request that if the permit is granted, that some of the mature trees be left, especially around the large building, to buffer what that building's going to look like. And my second request for trees is to have some intense landscaping on the edge of the lake to buffer. As you look at the houses, it's very intense, that they're very close. And just to have some trees or berms, if it's possible to leave some of the smaller trees
along the lake to make this a little more visible, acceptable for the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yep, sure. Oh, yep. Apologize, I didn't hear what you said the first time. Yeah, I guess hold your hand up if you would. And do you solemnly, you need, here we go. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, sir. Yes, thank you, ma'am. And you have signed in? And, yeah, please name and address when you.
My name is Linda Povich. I live at 3446 Old Airport Road. I back up to the Lee's Branch. Our home is right. However, on your map, we are labeled as someone else. That's not us. We've lived there for 35 years.
Ma'am, did you receive a letter?
We received no letter, no nothing, other than through the neighborhood. We got nothing. I even tried to talk to someone that I saw landscaping in our backyard, putting up the dividers in the middle of the ditch where the stream, the little ditch runoff is back there. They, of course, just said, oh, we're doing this for Carolina Colors. But no, we received no notice whatsoever until I heard about this meeting that was going to take place. I'm not going to repeat things people have already said. I've lived through several hurricanes there. The water cannot run off fast enough. No studies have been done. It backs up halfway our backyard. Our house sits fairly far back on our lot. We have a 2-acre lot. The water comes up during any heavy rainfall halfway up the back, and then when it tries to run off through Lee's Branch, through the back there, down into Bryce's Creek, it cannot accommodate the water. Mr. Hearn, who was up earlier, it does take out his driveway and all along that side when the water tries to run off. So something would obviously have to be done there. But if you clear cut or you take down the trees, you're now taking down what would absorb the water. So then you have nothing but direct runoff. That is my first concern, is the water. Number 2, I've worked in the healthcare industry my whole life. Good luck on finding help. I have a 93-year-old mother-in-law in McCarthy. They cannot find help. They have plenty of openings for people to live there. Also, Viridian. We checked into Viridian. We thought we might want to move her there. They have plenty of openings there, and they have trouble finding help. So all I can say is you must be paying good, because there is a direct need for health care in whatever capacity there is. I do attend the new physician's office that moved out there, doing a great job. I worked for that company for 42 years. I see a need. I see a need on outlying areas, but not within a neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask her address again?
What was?
Or the lot where she's located again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's labeled wrong on the map.
So if we count down from Waterscape down Old Airport Road.
Ma'am, can you come to the microphone,
Yeah,
please?
come on, yes, come back.
3446 Old Airport Road. I believe it says Moran's. They used to own property on the other side that was sold, but we've lived there 35 years, and our name's not on that map.
So if you count the lots down,
Let me look on my phone, because I can see it better there. It doesn't. It's the 2-acre lot. You see where the Lee's Branch runs behind?
yeah, right, yep.
And go 2, 3, 4. It's the larger lots. If we had a pointer, I could show you. But I can't blow this up big enough to see it. I think it says Moran on the name.
We found it here, big square lot down
But
towards the
that's,
bottom.
and we didn't receive anything, and our last name is Povich.
This one.
Moran, there it is. Okay.
It's I can show you where it is too. We'll get it. We'll find it.
Lot
Okay.
number 5
Lot number 5 for the record.
is what it says on this.
Is that right? Yeah, okay. Name and address, please.
Hello, my name is Carrie Smith. I live at 3410 Old Airport Road. I did receive the letter. I actually received 2 different letters. We bought our house in Old Airport Road 6 years ago, October of 2017. We were a small family with 2 children. We looked at this view. It's beautiful. Nothing can go in the land behind our house. We moved there for safety, for privacy. We homeschool our children. We have since had 2 more children, and so now we're a family with 4 small children. And as you know, young children like to ride their bikes. We ride our bikes to the adjoining neighborhoods over to Evans Mill, over near Tyler Rhine, which is where they are trying to dump some of the traffic that they are trying to put in this area. My husband owns his own lawn care and landscape and auto business, and he has multiple trailers in the back of our yard, so he has cameras naturally to make sure that our property doesn't get stolen or tampered with. On our cameras, we have seen black bears, we have seen deer come all the way to our property line. So now you're talking about adding all these things and chasing these bears out of the woods into our property where my children are playing. That's dangerous. That is very scary. Sorry.
You're good. Thank you. Yeah.
I also have witnessed, we walked out our window while we homeschool, and I don't care what traffic experts say from national data, we have watched it go from random cars here and there throughout the day to constant, like a highway, 18-wheelers flying down our road while my children are on their bikes, mind you. That's scary. And now you're talking about adding 3,600 more trips a day. Where will we go and what will we do with our homes that we have built and that we have produced families in and that we are trying to live a normal life without our entire backyard lit up by humongous football field lights? If you've gone by and seen the Viridian, you've seen how lit up it is. I have a natural back porch. I'm sorry, not natural. I have a nice back porch on my brick ranch where we sit on the back porch and we love watching the view. We watch the animals back in the woods. We see the birds come in and out all the time. And now you're going to tear all that down and produce a city, which we moved there to get away from the city type life because we don't want all of the busyness, the dangers. I mean, the animals have already been chased further and further by the road construction out by the highway. And now those animals are living in the woods behind our house. And once those are torn down, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to come in my backyard and potentially harm my children. If that is not scary enough, then I hope your money is worth it.
Yeah, we got another. Okay. Did you get notification also? Name and address and notification, please. Yeah.
David Bush, 3404 Old Airport Road. Depending on what version of the map you're looking at, my property one is the one that says 8-foot paved walking path right across my property. Yeah, so I guess before I start, another prior military guy here, retired. I am all about freedom to do things on your own property. And I know at some point somebody's probably going to build, populations are growing. But having a commercial entity behind you is something totally different. That should come with some other checks and balances. And some of the information that I read before I started my prepared statement, was previous times when these particular type meetings were taking place with either Thrivemore or their previously named outfit. A lot of folks are curious why they weren't invited to the public meetings that apparently took place. That could be anything. It could be an administrative error or whatever, but looking at the map, you can only see about a dozen places down alongside Airport Road that would abut to that property. I understand Carolina Colors got a meeting. I wonder why we didn't. But anyway, one last thing. It probably doesn't do you any good if you chuckle and giggle and roll your eyes when someone's making a passionate statement about their property because they're not an expert witness or maybe they don't follow Robert's Rules of Order. So good evening. My name is David Bush. I've told you my wife Tracy and I live at 3404 Old Airport Road. We lived there coming up on 10 years. Let me start by stating that I don't know these folks. I don't know Thrivemore. Do I know or have I ever spoken to our alderman, with the exception of the construction widened Old Airport Road and basically left my mailbox in the roadside ditch because they didn't move my culvert back or replace it like the rest of Old Airport. It's still basically at the bottom of the ditch if you don't want to drive by and look. Seriously though, I don't know Thrivemore, but respect in general what the publicly understood purpose of their facilities are. That being said, unlike their previous efforts, to meet and talk with the immediate potential neighbors. No one has said a word. It wasn't until somebody that was affected immediately and Carolina Colors had made mention of it that I even thought to ask about it. With today's news being overwhelmingly abundant, it doesn't take too much to slip something in unnoticed. And maybe this wasn't the intent, and I'm not trying to imply that it was, but again, there's only 12 of us up there. It wouldn't have taken a whole lot to get to know your immediate neighbors. You can ensure we did our due diligence to see if there'd be any impacts to us or our property. I live on a few acres where I can have livestock. I can run a small business when my work on base isn't so demanding. And I'm able to go out in my backyard and not have to worry about privacy. Not that that would be an issue to have a neighbor, just not 300 to 500 of them with a paved path right up to my previously private little piece of heaven, which took me a long time to be able to find, and it'll probably take me even longer to pay off. Again, I don't have an issue with the organization, but our community is not totally a retirement community. It's full of working age adults, many, as you've just heard, with young children. Even still, an assisted living facility and care home was just finished on what I thought I would expect to be the edge of the proposed development. As well as I don't know, but hundreds of apartments. So in addition to this area being very quickly overpopulated by younger folks as well as older folks, who will more often than younger require emergency services or things of that nature, you're considering the addition of another high concentration of older folks. So don't get me wrong, I love older folks, and one day I hope to be one of them. But this is not just a lot, it's too much. It's not the total face of our community. The impacts to current residents, as well as to the proposed residents, will be immense. In addition to the augmentation of emergency services, which we haven't talked about other than we have a firehouse, I haven't heard whether or not there's been any sort of capacity study done to determine all of the new buildings that's taken place across from Harris Teeter, a huge high concentration of people, in addition to another high concentration of people. I mean, yeah, we've got a firehouse. Is one truck going to be enough? Is one firehouse going to be enough? And if this is truly a not-for-profit and it's tax exempt, who's paying for it? Us via taxes? Will there be a grant which is ultimately paid by us via taxes? Or just questions I'd like to know the answers to. So I'll continue to run my air and impact tools, sanding and grinding on boats. We will let our free-range chickens and guineas squall and raise a ruckus like they normally do, as well as the donkey that I hear but can never seem to find. We'll continue to shoot our shotguns, rifles, and handguns as needed, and late Saturday nights we'll try to get the timing set on our kids' hot rods. Hopefully we'll get the exhaust on soon thereafter. I know you've done your due diligence to show that traffic will not be affected by the residents. 3,500 is a lot of effect. But what about the employees, the guests, the constant deliveries, the nonstop construction to get material here and get it built? What about the road that has already become a casualty to the dump trucks and loggers? If you've ever taken the road from Harris Teeter to Old Airport Road, you know those speed bumps that weren't there when they built the road. They're just literal dips in the road. If you've ever driven that way, you know what I mean. You don't have to speed to bottom out in a factory-conditioned car. Now, I'm not trying to make light of this, but I want you to know that I'm not here out of malice either. With so much inexpensive dirt nearby, why would we try to shoehorn something in like this here? Our speed limit has already been reduced with a somewhat better road, so rather than increase it, it got reduced. It doesn't appear that taxes will be generated to offset the self-generation of burden. We'll probably be the ones to ultimately pay. And if we don't pay via cash, we're going to pay via property values or by obstruction to scenery or just loss of privacy. But we'll ultimately pay. Finally, if this ultimately moves forward, I would like for Thrivemore to have a public meeting with the affected homeowners that have not been met. Record and attempt to address any concerns, and if a permit approval takes place at that time, that the footprint is frozen in perpetuity for this building, or this facility, meaning no future accesses are created through existing neighborhoods by either purchased, gift, loan, or any other method. What may end up ultimately being agreed upon by those directly affected will not be altered in any way. The reason why I put that last little footnote in there, and you're welcome to look it up for yourself as a piece of evidence, is it was made mention at the February 17th, 1990 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. So they had requested to build this facility, and maybe it wasn't intentional, but not everyone knew that they also had property off to the side with options which allowed them to build a throughway there. So when that finally came out in the wash, then everybody was a little concerned. Wait a minute, so you're not just having this entrance here and there. You could potentially have another one in the back. And what ended up occurring, and again, I'm not an expert. You can read it if you're a reading expert. Basically, they said that due to safety and marketability, they needed to have the other entrance. Well, at that point, they were already there. So there's a lot of passionate folks in here because you're affecting not just something that's small, but as I was trying to ask in the beginning, there haven't been any substantial negative impacts of property values. I mean, who's to determine what's substantial when it comes to my wallet? When it comes to my privacy and my safety, I get that these folks are concerned, and I get that they're passionate about their speeches. It would serve you well to also be respectful when they're speaking. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Yep, thank you. Do we have any additional comments? Okay, so we're going to close this portion of the public comment.
Would I be allowed to just say one thing that I forgot earlier? And I'll take less than 10 seconds.
Yeah, come on up, just quick. Just we got the rebuttal coming, but just quick.
I did look up the master plan for Carolina Colors from their website. It says with more than 1,500 acres of residential recreational acres, liberal open spaces were combined with a generous golf course acreage to create a comfortable, uncrowded community. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll close this portion of the public hearing so we can start with the rebuttal or do we need to do the?
If you're going to allow the applicant to rebut, you don't necessarily have to close the public hearing.
Okay, fair enough. So.
Can I ask the staff a question? Just have a couple of questions regarding things that people brought up.
Yes, sir.
One thing I think we have to kind of explain to you that what's in this letter, what was sent in the letter to the adjacent property owners, is binding on us. There is an inherent right to develop the land for residential use without a special use permit. So one of my questions is, without the special use permit, approximately how many residences could be built on the 60 acres?
It would take me time to actually look into that because there's multiple uses that are permitted by right, whereas this one in particular, the multifamily residence, is a special use permit, so that's why we're.
But duplexes are allowed without a special use permit, is that correct?
I could not tell you directly off the top of my head. I wouldn't want to misspeak on that, but I'd have to actually look into that to really diagnose how many uses are allowed.
And the other question is, because it came up before on the matter I was concerned about, was that I know some type of restaurants are allowed with the special use permit, but as I recall, there's some kind of limitation on it. Do we know what that is?
No.
And I apologize for that's what I was trying to look up on the phone. It's hard to do it on the phone. That's what I was trying to do.
Okay.
I'm sure there are any number of limitations. Mr. Duffy, I think the staff is prepared to answer questions as it pertains to the specific details of this application.
That's what I meant.
Again, it would be something that I would have to definitely look into. It would take more time than me being able to try to pull that right now. I apologize, I don't have that readily available.
Yes, I apologize, Mr. Remington. I was trying to we're going to close this portion. I didn't mean entirely. So yeah, we want to do the rebuttal now to the against. And once they're finished, we're going to ask if there's any public comment for, and there'll be rebuttal again. So anyway, here we go.
Just wanted to address a couple of comments that I heard. First of all, say that the board needs to keep in mind that this is a use permit application, and you're just dealing with whether this satisfies the use requirements under the ordinances and under the plans of New Bern. And I think our evidence has shown through expert testimony that it does. This project, even if you approve this special use permit application, which we think you should based on the evidence that you've heard, is going to have to go through several more stages of planning and approval processes and licensing processes in order to have the specific project approved. This plan is a proposal. This is not, I mean, the plan may change. It may be other things. Conditions for this are not appropriate this time. Things like stormwater plans and runoff and things like that will be addressed when the site plan goes through the approval process for the specific buildings and things like that in order to get the different approvals. Traffic, lighting is another aspect. And again, you know, this is going to be a multi-level community for life care. They're not going to put, this is not going to be Trent Olds, and it's not going to look like Trent Olds, because they want this community to be something where people can live through the entirety of their life. And it's going to have walking trails, and just to note, you know, they're talking about, you know, whether we're going to preserve trees and things like that. On the plans that we've submitted as a proposal, there are tree save areas where big sections of trees are going to be saved, that they're not going to be touched. They're going to be there as they are now. So, you know, things like that will be addressed going on. This is I just want you all to keep in mind that this is a use permit. You know, heard some information, and certainly if there's a question for any of the specific members of the applicant's team that spoke to things, they certainly are happy to testify and answer those questions. But the gentleman talked about the fast food restaurant. I think we've made it clear, but I want to make sure it's clear. That is not one of the uses that these people are going to put on that property. That was a conservative, in the traffic analysis, they use the highest numbers possible so that they can determine whether the traffic is going to need improvements and things like that. So they took a fast food restaurant, which is the highest use, but that is not what's going to be there. And if it was, it's something that's going to need to be go through other approvals and things like that. The restaurants and things that would be in this property would be within the multi-family buildings that are on the property. Drainage and things like that, again, will be addressed during stormwater evaluations. You all will need to take a look at whether any of the individuals that got up tonight presented to you what is considered to be competent evidence. And competent evidence under North Carolina law is basically not allowed. It's deemed incompetent in certain areas, value, traffic, and other areas where an expert witness would be required to opine on. And, you know, again, I have to make objections to point that out. You've heard testimony tonight on the fact that this project is in harmony based on the fact that the architecture and other things are going to be similar to what's already out there in Carolina colors. This is not going to endanger public health or safety because, you know, as the experts have talked to you about, the fact that the utilities and water service and things like that are going to be addressed. You know, lighting, safety lighting, it's going to be minimized to the extent possible, but it's going to have to comply with whatever the lighting ordinances are for the city of New Bern. You've heard from Mr. Morgan, and Mr. Morgan testified that in his professional opinion, this is not going to hurt values. When he did that, he looked at communities, other independent, you know, life care communities within New Bern and other areas, and compared those, if there were sales of property around them, compared them to see if there was in values, and his opinion, in his professional opinion, there's not. And again, then, you know, I've gone over the land use plan and how it provides, and how it complies with that. I don't know if you all have any specific questions that you wanted to ask any of the team members, but again, we believe we've met the criteria under the ordinance for a special use permit. And, you know, again, unless there's other people that want to speak in favor of it, and we'd have an opportunity to address that.
Fair enough. Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I have a question for Christy Mack. please.
With Mr. Applicant.
It was brought up by one of the other individuals in the room as to high-rise. I thought you spoke to the fact of them being cottages, single-family. What high-rise is there a high-rise in this plan?
There isn't. So I believe a high-rise by definition is either 70 or 75 feet to the highest occupiable floor. Per our R8 zoning, we can have a 50-foot maximum height. So our one large independent living building would abide by those zoning rules of 50 feet to the highest level of the roof.
Thank you.
Just a minute. We're gonna finish up with the questions, our questions to the presenters. Yeah.
Again, I'm Kimberly Barb. I'm a landscape architect and work for Stimmel. We're civil engineers as well. So in speaking to the drainage, again, any property development must match the pre-development runoff rates. So as it is a wooded site now, we have to look at that runoff. And as we mentioned, to the east is Carolina Lake, which is in fact a stormwater pond, a very large stormwater pond, and a very attractive one. So the way the lay of the land is, our site is set at 23 feet above sea level around the peninsula. And as you travel down to Lee's Branch, it does in fact go down to 11 feet above sea level. So we have that fall across our site. What we will be doing is developing the property in a way that stormwater will flow towards the east as it is practical to do, and to abide by the current stormwater device that's in effect and what its capabilities are. We also have a stormwater pond shown in the lower portion of the site, which as we drop down in elevation, physically we cannot drain to the east. So we will again, within that area, drain the impervious, which includes the roadways, the parking, and the housing, and all of that will be held at the same rate as pre-development and released at the same rate. So that is what the stormwater rules require of us and what our design would be towards. I think I wanted to also mention about the riparian buffers and the wetlands. We've had those mapped. We have to adhere to the rules of the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality for all of our erosion control, and also the blue line streams. So the 50-foot riparian buffer that is on adjacent property has been in existence ever since that mapping took place. And that is from again, other levels, not our indication. What we're required to do as developers is not disturb that on our side of the stream, and that is the intent. That will also be some of the areas, again, where we will save trees and not disturb. We cannot grade in that area or impact it in any way. Along the wetlands, it's the same application. We must stay out of the wetlands and adhere to those rules, and that's the intention. Are there any specific questions on those items?
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is the Neuse River Basin guidelines,
Yes.
which require the 50-foot buffer, 50 foot on your side, and what's on the map is showing 50 additional feet, but that exists no matter what, whether you develop or not. It's a total of 100 feet.
Correct, and the impacts there would be to either party, either side, either landowner. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions?
And then as to the lighting, I did want to speak. We are expecting and anticipating that we will provide safe lighting within the community, but especially along the lake and the areas for the single family, we would do what's called pedestrian scale lighting. That's 12 to 14 feet. I believe the Viridian, and we've been there and taken a look, those are in the 20 to 25 foot range. They're shoebox fixtures. They're much more efficient, but they are not attractive in a residential setting. So our client and our design team all have agreed that anything on the lake side would be in the pedestrian scale. And the trails along the lake would be bollards or path lighting, again for the safety of the residents, but everything would cast downward and not be to that scale. Okay. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, sir.
Just a couple of closing comments. First of all, as we move forward, if you approve this, I am very open to meeting with the neighbors on Old Airport Road and apologize to them here that we haven't done that. We are good neighbors wherever we put a campus because our neighbors are important to us. So just, you have my commitment that we would continue to do that. And then the last comment is, we started this journey with a market study for New Bern that showed a need for residential housing for older adults. And so someone is going to build in New Bern, and someone is going to take up that need. And if they don't, they're going to all end up leaving, and they're going to go to Cypress Glen and Greenville. And we think older adults have contributed a lot to the quality of life for all of us, and we think they deserve a beautiful place, you know, for their final years. And we believe they deserve to stay in New Bern, where they lived most of their life. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it.
Yeah, thanks. Do we have any additional questions? Okay, so we're move on to the next phase, which would be, is there any public that wants to speak in favor of the project? All right, so we'll go to the next part to where we would like people to have an opportunity for rebuttal also, as far as the comments. Is that true where we're at?
Generally, the applicant has the last rebuttal.
Okay. So we have no additional for?
It's entirely up to you all because it's your meeting, but generally the applicant makes their presentation, there are notified opponents, notified proponents, then the applicant has the last public comments before you begin your deliberations. If you want to deviate from that, you certainly can, but.
Well, I think we have addressed, the public comment, or we've at least had the public comment. We've had the for, and then the against, and then the rebuttal. So I would be fine to close this and then move into deliberations. But it's pleasure of the board.
Any?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll close public comment. So I guess we're on to the start of the process here, the 6 topics. And the first topic that we need to discuss a little bit is the application complete? Does anybody have any questions or comments in reference to the application? So is it y'all's preference to try to take a vote after each one, or wait till we get to the end?
Historically, you've deliberated on each of the criteria, and at the conclusion of those deliberations, then you would make separate motions, either finding or not finding those 6 criteria.
Okay, we'll go with it. So the next one, the requested permit in the jurisdiction of the table and the permitted uses. I think we had a little bit of comment. Is there any discussion in reference to number 2?
The only thing are you following? I'm sorry, just as administrative matter, make sure we're all on the same page here.
We had different sets, so yeah, different set of numbers.
Okay. As far as the requested permit is within its jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses, I think the only issue I had was on the fast food, which was the fast food restaurant, which has been said that that's not part of this plan. In fact, it's not permitted based on our table of permissible uses. And so if that use was ever going to be put on one of these out parcels, I think that requires rezoning. That's not before the board. And so I think, it's important to keep in mind that our purpose here is to look at the uses that are suggested, and we look at the site plan to go through and whether or not the site plan and the testimony that we've heard, the evidence that we're hearing on both sides, whether it satisfies each of these elements. And I would just say that I think based on the multiple uses here, multifamily, possible nursing care, there was a potential for daycare, which is not again part of this site plan, but all of those are permissible uses under our table. So I think it's within the jurisdiction.
Is there any additional discussion?
I agree. The proposed is to establish multifamily residential use.
Yeah. And as we go through, do we want to go ahead and make a motion to vote on each of these as we've discussed them? I think that was
I think that's what was our question originally.
Yes, that would be the best practice.
If that's what
Yeah.
you'd like to do, you can do it that way.
Since we've gone through the first two, if
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I don't have a problem. I think we're okay. If we want to do the first two as we move forward.
Could somebody read the first two exactly?
Yeah, so the first two, we discussed the first on a different set of numbers here, but the application is complete. That's one.
Yes.
And then the other one is the requested permit is within the jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses.
Yes.
Yes.
So if we're at that point, we need to take a motion from somebody in a second, and we can discuss and vote.
I move that the requested permit is within its jurisdiction according to the table of permissible uses, and that the application is complete.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second and no discussion, so we're ready for a vote. Do we have a roll call?
So, well, Chairman, are you asking for a roll call for each board member that's voting?
I'm asking you, do we need to do a roll call? Yeah.
You certainly can, or you can, yes, let's do a roll call.
Okay. Board member Kathleen,
Aye.
Aye.
Chairman, and then Board member Ferguson,
Aye.
and Board member Duffy,
Aye on 1 and 2.
and Board member, Sampson.
Aye.
Okay. So now we're down to number 3, which I'll read off, that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan submitted and approved. Is there any discussion with the board?
I would want a condition added that a great deal of the traffic here, I'm looking at the table right now, and I'm sorry that's not available to everybody, but what the table actually, the estimate was based upon the fast food operation generating 1,636 one-way trips a day. That's about 45% of the total. The total is, I'm guessing here, but the total is 3,600, it's all a guess. But so, for me, it would have to be conditional on there being no fast food. I can't vote yes on it, because that amount of traffic is gonna have a safety impact on the neighborhoods. We do have school buses, people picking up children, and there will be, some truck traffic bringing in foods and necessary materials for these residents. So, for me, that would have to be conditional.
Okay, so from a conditional and
If that condition's added, I can say yes, but I don't know if the rest of the board wants to do that.
Well, I don't think, I just don't think a condition is proper or is necessary, because again, the table of uses.
There is some food use on there. I don't remember exactly what it is, but unless you can tell me what it is, then.
Yeah, I think the record evidence in this case was that there was dining services offered within the building that was going to be that age.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I do
That'd
not.
be only for residents, the food service.
Correct. I think that's from the record evidence, I think that's been met.
Yeah.
I think we've heard that there is no plan for fast food restaurant, and I don't think that this board could decide that there is fast food restaurant.
I think it's on the site plan, isn't it? Is it on the site, is it on what they submitted?
No.
For fast
No.
food? No.
According to what I read, Mr. Chairman, it's a multi-family residence use is the proposal, and it has nothing to do with fast food.
And again, just to reiterate, I think the traffic impact analysis testimony was that the fast food was used as a placeholder for a high use to show what a use would look like. When asked if that use wasn't there, it was.
This is what I'm talking about. They're showing of the traffic estimate that they made for 3602. If you take out the fast food restaurant, then that gets cut by like 45%.
Right. No, I agree, which is why I think it's a good placeholder to show what a dense traffic area would look like with that type of use. I'm just saying that use is not in the site plan before us, so I don't think it's necessary or proper to limit.
Yeah, my assumption was to go on with that, was that it'd be similar to if they used a high-density, low subdivision alongside and said, if we put the same place, which is similar to why I guess I asked the question earlier, that if we had a high density, if we could throw out a number where it would be. And I think that's where they're at. I mean, we have the 2 out parcels, and I guess a question to staff, since those out parcels are there, they are still zoned R8.
Correct.
So anything that went in there other than an R8 use would have to go to planning and zoning and start the process all over again.
Yes, Chairman, that is correct.
So it's not something that is within what we'd be discussing or approving. I think that's correct. So there any additional?
Yes,
Okay.
I just would like for them to keep as many trees as possible, so they don't upset, the animals and stuff, Make sure they keep as many, as many trees as possible, because I know the young lady was saying something about, the deers and stuff, so we know anybody to know that when you start tearing trees and stuff down, that means the animals have to go somewhere else. But I just want to keep as many as possible. I don't say keep all of them, but as many as possible.
So is,
That-
yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's a landscape question which would be dealt with on an individual as the process goes along, I believe.
Yeah, and I guess that was my question to staff from a procedural standpoint. Where would we be in reference to the landscape plan and the process? Are we there yet, or are we just discussing the use?
It would just be the discussion for the use, as I understand it.
So would it be, ordinary or extraordinary, for lack of two good words, that we would add anything to a word that say would maximize?
There would be a process, there will be additional site plans that would be submitted to city staff to make sure that they comport with our landscape buffering rules, to make sure that all the requirements of the land use ordinance are satisfied as to the specifics of where trees will go, where sidewalks will go, all of those other amenities that could impact the concerns that Board Member Sampson has raised.
And just to reiterate the question, this is really a question to staff, that adding a condition on this, element for materially endangering the public health and safety about, save tree areas or, tree is not really permissible, given we are focused here on the use.
Correct.
And that would be something more appropriate for a staff decision that could be appealed if, unfavorable, but that is something further down the development line, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I don't think it not only needs a condition right now, I don't think we can condition that.
Is there any additional discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move that the use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan submitted and approved.
Second?
So move, we have a motion and a second.
All right. Roll call, and Ms. Marty, Board Member Marty.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
and Mr. Ferguson,
Aye.
Mr. Duffy,
Aye.
and Ms. Sampson.
Aye.
Number 4, that the use meets all required special uses and specifications. Do we have any discussion?
I would just say, for the record and for the folks in the room, the record before us that will be available and is available is not only the materials that have been presented, but staff comments as provided. And what I'm looking at is staff comments from the DRC review process, which specifically addressed this element, and so I'm fine with it.
So I guess I have one question, and that's just in reference to where we're at procedurally with, if we chose to do a condition, I think that down at the end, there is an opportunity to add a condition to the end, so that is still open if we so choose, right?
If you have competent evidence that suggests you should have a condition, you have an opportunity to consider conditions at a later time.
Okay, so I just, good enough. So, discussion, any additional discussion? Do we have a motion?
I move that the use meets all required special uses and specifications.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
All right, roll call, and Board Member Martin,
Aye.
and Mr. Chairman,
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson,
Aye.
Mr. Duffy,
Aye.
and Ms. Sampson.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move on down to the 5th. That the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property, or that the use is a public necessity. there any discussion? Yes, I have a question in reference to the wording. When we say the use is a public necessity, are we asking that the permitted, if we offer the permit, that that is a necessity, or where we have definition wise?
So it's separate, essentially. It's saying that it's either or.
Okay.
That's how it's supposed to be
Not
taken.
both, either or.
Not both, either or, yes, sir.
Fair enough.
I think, again, just for the record, based on the testimony that's presented, and again, I understand the frustrations here from the public comment period. We are very tied as a quasi-judicial body by what the law says. The law, which is general statute, you can look up, says that when it comes to the value of adjoining or abutting property, that is required to be from an expert. That is expert testimony. And so any evidence to the contrary is not competent evidence. And so because of the and it is the applicant's burden here to show, if they came in without an appraiser, then my thought would be, no, you haven't met your burden there. However, because you have competent evidence, an expert appraisal who we have their credentials that I think is proper, I would just say that I think they've met their burden and we don't have any other competent evidence that rebuts that. And so with that, I have no issue there.
I agree with the fact that substantially, and the evidence presented tonight.
Any additional comment? Do we have a motion?
I move that the use will not substantially injure the value of adjoining or abutting property.
Do we have a second?
Or that the use is a public necessity.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Is there any discussion?
And
Go take a
roll
vote.
call for Board Member Marty.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Mr. Duffy.
Based upon the evidence presented, aye.
And Ms. Sampson.
Aye.
Number 6, that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located.
Mr. Chairman, based on the evidence that was presented tonight, feel that it will be developed based on the plan, and there are enough steps that have to be met going forward that it should match the character of the use requested.
Thank you. Any additional comments?
The only comment that I would add here, and again, just for the record in our deliberations, is that given the location of where this is and what the proposed use is, which is multifamily residence, which is residents, people living here, that I think that based on that use as well as the evidence that's been presented tonight about the concept plans, what the landscaping will look like, I think it is going to comport with the general area that it is where it's located. And so I think that we have competent evidence that establishes this element.
Yeah, there appears to be many areas that have significant buffered areas and trees left and buildings from the property line and the walking trail, so yeah, totally agree. Any additional comments? Do we have a motion?
I'm sorry, the public comment period has ended. So we're not taking questions, we're deliberating.
What I will say,
Mr. Chair, it's not appropriate for members of the public to make comments during your deliberation at this time. So you might want to give some type of instruction as to the public about how to comport at this portion of the hearing.
yes, so what may be a good suggestion is wait once we're through and talk with the developers and try to get names and addresses in. They've offered the opportunity to discuss challenges and opportunities, and I think they're more than willing to do that. So don't run off. Please try to visit, and we'll go from there.
I would also note that the general statutes provide appeals. That's something that can be looked into. Just generally speaking, I think that's something important for the board to know, is that our decisions are reviewable. Again, as to this element, again, I don't have any issue. I think the record evidence meets the element, and so with that, I move that the location and character of the use, if developed according to the plan as submitted and approved, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located.
Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
All right, roll call.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ferguson.
Aye.
Mr. Duffy. Aye. And Ms. Sampson.
I'll say aye, but you all talk with the developer. I'd rather for you talk with the developer, try to get something, together, But I have to follow the list and the rules, so.
And one further note that we might as well discuss before we move forward, is there any additional conditions that anybody would like to discuss at this time? Any board members to add through?
No.
Okay. We have an opportunity to adjourn the meeting if we have a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well, I was going to say,
Okay.
before we do that, Mr. Chairman, if you would, at least just for the record, explain that the applicant's application is approved.
Application has been approved.
Yes, sir. So for the record, the application has been approved, and I will say the comment just previously, please do your best to stay and speak with the applicant about the permit and about the process and where we're at moving forward. I think they're pretty good folks, great folks, and be more than willing to talk with you all. Okay.
Is there
Vote to
a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
We are adjourned?
Not yet.
I move to adjourn.
Second, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we're technically adjourned.